Hey everyone, welcome to the Shameless Podcast. I'm Srinidhi.
I'm Hanya.
I'm Abby.
I'm Dylan.
I'm Emily, and we are the founders of SHAMEless. In today's episode, our guest speaker, Gray, will be sharing their story on mental health and all the main lessons they've learned from their experiences. Hope you enjoy!
Hi, my name is Gray, and I'm kind of just going to be talking about just my general journey with mental health and how it's impacted me and how far I've come from the day I was diagnosed to now, almost finishing out junior year, 5 years later. So just like a general outline of my story, I was diagnosed in 6th grade, and I remember the night after my diagnosis, I felt completely alone. And I genuinely remember crying myself to sleep that night. I had no idea what was going on. Because before then, I had never heard of depression. I had never heard of anxiety. I had never heard of anything mental health related. And then in 7th grade, it progressively got worse until I was hospitalized after what would be the first of 3 attempts. And so that kind of led to meeting with at least 20 therapists, like 10 psychiatrists. And, in 7th grade, I was put on medication. And then in 7th grade, I also started hearing voices, which was terrifying because, you don't hear of many people hearing voices. And, it's even more rare for a 7th grader to hear voices. So they put me on medication and I just felt completely alone. And over the course of the past 5 years, my mom and I have had a very rocky relationship through all this. She came from an immigrant family who immigrated from China. And, if you don't know, it's very rare for Asian parents to really talk with their children about their feelings, about genuine feelings. And it's very rare for them to talk about mental health above all else, because it's just something that isn't really talked about. So, over the course of the past 5 years, we've had multiple fights, or she's stepped over the lines and she said things that I know she doesn't mean, but, they're still hurtful. So it's been a really long road leading to my diagnosis and to the point of accepting my diagnosis. So I guess this step one would just be, I had to teach myself everything that I know now. And that was done through Google searches. You go to the psychiatrist or the doctor's office and they hand you these brochures and these pamphlets, and they just read that and it'll give you a very textbook definition, but it really doesn't explain a thing at all. And obviously I've listened to podcasts and all of that, but they don't really help you through anything.
So I just have a quick question. Around this time, did they bring up mental illness or anything mental health related in school? Was there any class that brought up any of the subjects related to mental health?
In a sense, yes. In a sense, there were obviously the health classes where they would be like, this is what depression looks like. This is what happens when someone is depressed. But again, they're all very textbook definitions. They don't go into detail, and they don't make it so that you yourself can relate to the subject. It is very much a teacher providing information. Sometimes it doesn't even sink in, and sometimes you don't even understand what you're listening to. So that was really difficult in school because I knew that something was going on with me, and I knew that something was wrong. Just to say something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what was wrong, and I couldn't figure out why I felt the way I felt and why no one seemed to understand how I felt, which leads me to kind of the second step was really learning how to articulate my feelings. That for me was one of the most difficult steps because I have never been great with words personally, and now all of a sudden I have these doctors coming in and asking me, why do you feel this way? how do you feel and why do you think you feel this way? And that for me was terrifying because I was like, I feel sad. I don't know why I feel sad. I just feel sad. And I think that's something like a lot of people can relate to, is just not being able to put your feelings into words. So I think that was like something that was one of the biggest challenges for me, was really just learning how to talk about my feelings and learning how to be open and learning how to be vulnerable. Um, and then coming with that was learning how to talk to my parents, especially my mother, who doesn't believe in mental health, did not believe in mental health for the longest time too. Probably for the first 3 years, she really didn't think anything was wrong. And she called me dramatic. She called me, attention seeker. She called me every name in the book. And a lot of that was bottled up inside of me because I didn't want to incriminate her. I didn't want to make it feel like I was victimizing myself. So I would, because at this point I was going to weekly talk therapy, and I didn't want to, get her in trouble. So I, wouldn't really talk to anyone about this. And I think through bottling everything up inside, I genuinely think that made it like 10 times worse. Because when you bottle things up inside, eventually it all just becomes like a big glob of feelings, and you don't know how to get through it. You don't know what's what. You don't differentiate between feelings of sadness and feelings of anger. Everything's kind of just mixed into one. And so when I finally got to the point of where I was like, okay, I'm old enough and I'm comfortable talking about my feelings and talking about my mom, I didn't know where to start. And I didn't know how to say these things that have been building up inside of me for the past like 2-3 years. So that was extremely difficult. And then probably the last step of just accepting all of it was having to learn how to seek help and learning how to fight for yourself and not have someone else fight for you. Because especially in the beginning, I was so young. Like, I was diagnosed when I was 12. So I was so young that, my parents would do the talking for me. And, we'd go to the doctors and be like, oh, Chloe, because I went by Chloe at the time. Oh, Chloe's been really sad recently. You can tell that she's been very sad. But as you get older, they start asking your parents to step out of the room, and they're starting to ask for your viewpoints. And you really just, sometimes you don't know what to say, because really there is no good way to describe it. There really is no definition, and there's no template for you to go off of. So it was really difficult for me to kind of accept what was happening, understand what was happening, and then having to translate that into what I would tell other people. So that was extremely difficult. And then along with, having to readjust my viewpoints and all of that, I had a lot of fears that kind of surfaced all of a sudden. Because when I was diagnosed, I didn't know a single person who was struggling with mental health. I didn't know anyone who had even had anyone in their family dealing with mental health, because that was just not something my friends and I talked about. But that was also not something that, we talked about in school, because we didn't start talking about it until like the end of 7th grade, because that's when the school board deems you old enough and mature enough to handle all of it. So we really didn't talk about it. So I had so many fears that surfaced along with, these new challenges that I have to overcome. I didn't want to be ostracized. I really didn't want people to think I was weird. I didn't want to lose friends. One of my genuine fears coming out of the hospital was, if I tell people that I was in the hospital, they're going to label me crazy and never talk to me again. Like, that was a genuine fear of mine. And I didn't want to be seen as different. I didn't want to be seen as, oh, that's the weird girl who, can't control her emotions. Or, that's the weird person who, they struggle with A, B, and C. And we don't want to be friends with them. So I was really worried that at some point in the timeline that I would, just lose all my friends, be seen as a freak, really have no support system like whatsoever. So that was challenging because, you get diagnosed, you're put on medication, you're put in the hospital, you come out of the hospital because you've missed 3 months of school now, and now you have to go back to school and pretend like everything is fine. And I remember the night before I was supposed to go back to school, my parents sat me down and they were like, hey, if anyone asks where you've been, just say you were in the hospital with food poisoning. Don't tell them where you actually were. And looking back on it now, that really struck me as odd because I was like, is this something I should be embarrassed about? Is this something that I should, hide or want to hide?
It must have been so difficult at a young age, like when we're not really given any resources for this kind of stuff when we're young in middle school. Like I don't think I started learning about any of this until maybe late middle school. And so, yeah, it's just like I can't imagine how many things you bottle up inside of you and all these fears that we have in middle school, like being ostracized or like a lot of us are scared of that kind of thing in middle school, but it must have been to even greater extent because this is something that, that you probably didn't have a lot of resources about and you couldn't reach out to anybody. And that just seems, I don't know, it's just, I can't imagine.
Yeah, it was a lot of pressure to fit in. And like all of our fears in middle school is wanting to fit in. That's really all you want in middle school. So it, like you said, it is the fear of wanting to fit in times 10.
Yeah, I completely agree with Dylan. And like the first time that I guess mental health was brought up to me was also like around like 8th grade, I guess, so like middle schoolish time. And it's just like horrible that your parents told you to say that it was food poisoning instead of what it actually was, because it's making you feel like you have to feel embarrassed about this, but you don't. So yeah, I just hate how mental health is such a stigmatized topic in our society.
At the time, it made sense to me that they would want to cover it up because at the time I wanted to cover it up because it was something I was ashamed of. It was something that I was worried that, would define me and people wouldn't be able to see past it. And looking back at it now, I think they made the right call. I think they wanted to protect me. I think they wanted to, keep me living as normal of a life as I could. And I really think they just wanted to make sure that I got my middle school experience, whatever a middle school experience is. But I think they wanted me to have, like, the best experience that I possibly could. And so that it makes sense, but it still is upsetting because your parents are, some of the people closest to you. They know you like the best. And then having them tell you to hide a part of yourself, which is such a big part of yourself. It is hard and it is upsetting thinking about it, but they came from, they had good intentions. They came from a good place and they tried their best.
Yeah, I think it's really admirable that even though your parents probably didn't react in a way that would have helped you during that time, but I think it's really admirable that you were able to reflect on that and see from their perspective and know that they have good intentions, because that's really hard to do, especially when they're like discrediting your experiences and what you're going through.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes with age, and a lot of it comes with because I have a younger sister, and I see her exhibiting some of the same signs that I did, and I get it. I don't want her to lose friends. I don't want her to think that, she's an outcast. I don't want her to think that, no one else is going through what she's going through, because there's so many people going through what she's going through. And so I get it. And, if I was in their position, or if I were in their shoes, I think I would have done the same thing. I'm not going to lie. I really think I would have just said, I might have worded it differently. I probably would have said, hold it in, tell people that you genuinely trust. And, just don't go around telling everyone this is where I was and this is why I was there. Because you don't have to lie you don't have to lie. You can tell the truth, but you don't have to tell the whole truth. Lying is not necessary. And I think that me telling everyone that I was in the hospital with food poisoning, I think that made it worse. Because I think when people started to find out, and when I started to become more open with my emotions, I think that's when people were texting me, and they were DMing me, and they were snapping me, and they were like, you were in the mental hospital, you said you had food poisoning. So it was something that caught up with me. Because I told so many people that, I had food poisoning, because as a 7th grader, if one of your classmates is missing for 3 months, you're curious as to where they've been. So, I posted, I think, freshman year, that I was like, hey, this is what really happened. And I had a lot of people contacting me afterwards, just wanting to really understand what happened. And then I think, along with, all the struggles with my parents and the struggles within myself, society really impacted my mental health. And there's a lot, this is like a hefty portion of the journey, is society and impacting mental health. It wasn't until 8th or 9th grade that I started noticing the romanticism of mental health, and how it's become really dolled up, and how people want a mental illness, and how people think that it makes them fun or quirky, or how mental health now has become an aesthetic. And so I think I realized in 8th grade that people were making mental health out to be something it definitely was not. Because I remember in 8th grade, in my math class, there was a girl who, would sit next to me and this other girl. And all she would talk about is how, she is really sad, she's depressed, how she is anxious all the time, and how, she's mentally ill. And when asked, how do you know this? Because, it's like a genuine question. She goes, I took a BuzzFeed quiz. I took a BuzzFeed quiz, and it said that I was depressed. And so that really kind of opened my eyes to the world of, wow, people can be ignorant. And wow, people really have a skewed view of what mental health really is. And the way she would approach the topics is, it wasn't, I'm struggling and this is why I'm struggling. It was, I'm struggling and I want to show off the fact that I'm struggling. I want people to know that I'm struggling. I want people to know that, I self-harm. I want people to know that my parents are super mean to me. Just, she would really flaunt all of it. And I think that hit me in a spot that I never thought I would be hit in. Because, after going through what I've been going through for like 3 years or 2.5 years at that point, now having someone kind of want what I was going through, and having someone who really tried to emulate what I was going through, that really was frustrating, because I knew how alone someone could feel when going through, a mental health journey. And I knew how frustrated and angry and like just upset that someone going through what I went through felt, because, you know, you have so many doctor's appointments and, you know, you're put on these medications and people tell you you need to do A, B, and C, because if you don't do A, B, and C, you're going to end up in a hospital. You're going to end up somewhere you don't want to be. And so I knew the frustration and I knew the anger, and I knew what it felt like to have nights where you feel so worthless and so alone. And all you can do is sit in your room and really just try your best to deal with it, because that's all you can do. And so to have this one person kind of take what I had gone through and turn it into a joke, turn it into a personality trait, that frustrated me to a point where I really think I texted her one night and I said things that I'm not proud of saying, but I think the overall message was, you need to stop. Because I don't think she understood how uncomfortable it made other people. Because as open as we are now about mental health, not everyone wants to hear about it. And not everyone wants to hear the gruesome details of your story. Which is why I think trigger warnings have really recently started popping up on, you know, posts or on things involving sensitive content, whether it's like the caption of a post or whether it's the video or the photo content itself. Trigger warnings have been starting to come up, which is very helpful because there are sore spots. A lot of people have sore spots and a lot of people don't want to talk about certain things. So I think that, you know, that was super important. But for her to not understand that this is not an aesthetic, this is not a personality trait, this is daily life for a lot of people, I think that was something super frustrating for me. And then there's also that other group of people who you can easily go on Google and search symptoms of blank. And you can read those symptoms and you can say, oh my God, that applies to me. I am blank. You know, you can self-diagnose yourself. And there are people who read those symptoms and then blow the symptoms out of proportion. And a lot of that comes from a place of just not fully understanding what they're reading and not fully understanding what they're talking about. I think my best example for this is obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. You know, there's so many people who, and I know they're joking, but they go, I'm very OCD because my room has to be clean all the time. Or, you know, that line isn't fully straight. It's, you know, making my OCD flare up. And as someone who knows what OCD is like, it's very frustrating to see people, you know, make jokes of what something very serious is.
Yeah, I definitely think it's just so unfortunate how widely used those kinds of like saying you're OCD or saying you're depressed or saying you're anxious or anything like that. I feel like it's so widespread that people don't even know that what they're doing is like what they're saying is insensitive. And it's a lot of ignorance. And like, how do you think we can try to educate people? Or I don't know, do you think like social media is helping?
You know, it's really nice that you bring that up because that actually is my next point. I think social media is both a blessing and a curse. I think that on one hand, you have the medium and you have the ability to spread awareness. And you can put things on your story, you can post about it, you can share your personal experience, and it's a great way to share knowledge because it's so accessible. But on the other hand, you have people who don't post about it and have misconceptions, or you have people who don't post about it and they suffer silently because they don't want people to know, or you have people who post about it but do the opposite of what the post says. You know, there's a lot of people posting like let's say body positivity. You know, it's very easy to post something on your story and say, hey, support this and this. You know, all bodies are beach bodies. But what you post may not be what you preach. and what you post, you might sing a completely different tune from. So I think it's extremely important to post about it, to educate for the purpose of educating people, but don't post about it to fit in with the trends. Don't post about it because it's the month for appreciating or awareness. I think you can tell a lot about someone from how they post and what they post. If they're only posting during mental health awareness days or months, if they're only posting during Pride Month, that their intentions are not in a place where they want to educate. Their intentions are in a place where they want to fit in, where they want to show the world like, hey, I support this, but they might not support it at all. And then I think you also have to be extremely careful about what you post. I am so guilty of this. When I was in 7th grade and I had just gotten Snapchat, I would post on my private story, I would post really alarming things and really triggering things. Because first of all, it was new to me, and I had never had social media before. So now I have this platform where I can post whatever I want and my parents can't see it, or I thought my parents couldn't see it. And then I have, this platform where all my friends are there. So, I don't have to text my friends. I can just post this on my story and all my friends will see it. And then, I now have this place that kind of acts as a diary, kind of acts like a place where I can get my anger out. So I'm so guilty of just posting really alarming things that, looking back at it now, I completely regret. I look back and I'm like, why did I post that? And it was no surprise that someone screenshotted what I had posted and brought it to the counselor. And, the counselor called me into her office and was like, what's going on? Do you want to talk about it? How are you going to deal with this? So I think be very careful about what you post, because like I said in the notes, it may upset others, because I know it upset a lot of people who saw it. I know now, at least. And it can be a poor representation of you. Some people, that's the only post they're going to see of you. And that might be their image of you for however long they're going to know you. It's kind of like that saying where you can do 50 good things, but the minute you do one bad thing, that's how people are going to see you. And that's how people are going to think of you. So I think that, be extremely careful. That's all really that I can say is be extremely careful. And then something that I had to learn was really not paying attention to social media, having it and not paying attention to it. Because no one is happy 24/7. Really, no one is happy 24/7. And a lot of pictures are either tuned up or, edited with a filter, or with an editing app. And a lot of people really only post at their highest moments, when they're super happy or with their friends. And it's so easy to get caught up in going on someone's feed and scrolling through and seeing all the smiley pictures with all their friends, and thinking, wow, why don't I have that? Or, why aren't they sad? In reality, they are sad and they do struggle with things, but some people really just don't talk about it. So it's really important to not pay attention to the facade and the mask that people have online, and really only think of them as real functioning human beings.
Yeah, I definitely think that's great advice. Because to be completely honest, I don't think social media is going to change overnight. I think people are going to continue posting happy things. I do that too. So, I understand it's not going to change overnight. So I think definitely what you're saying about changing how much it affects us, or how much we let it affect us, is really important. But I also do think it would be nice if maybe social media or the way people post things could change, but I don't know how. I guess we'll have to see. Yeah.
With the social media thing, I've noticed that lately on Instagram that casual posting or on any social media platform, just like photo reels or photo dumps have been a huge trend, I guess, these days. And I feel like, people see that as a way of people kind of breaking the fakeness around social media. But I also feel like those photo dumps or just like casual posting can make other people feel like they're being more genuine. And so they think that, oh, in real life, they're actually like happy all the time and their life seems so fun. And it kind of takes away that like filter that it's fake, but in reality, that casual posting can also not be like what's genuinely going on in their life. So, yeah, I feel like even though people are kind of making an effort and there's been a lot of change, I guess, to social media, I feel like fundamentally social media is just like a place where it's just has to be fake or it's gonna be fake. So yeah, social media definitely plays a large role in how you like perceive yourself, how you perceive other people, and it really shapes a lot of how you see the outside world.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to make social media a healthy thing in your life.
I completely agree with what everyone has said. And, Emily brings up a really great point about how casual posting gives the image of, removing the fakeness and being transparent, but really it adds another level of, this is my life and this is how great my life is. So that's really important to keep in mind. And then throughout the whole journey, I have realized that there are so many misconceptions about mental health. Just as a baseline, if you're struggling with anything, mental health related or not, it doesn't make you weak. You're definitely not struggling alone. You're not over exaggerating. You're not being dramatic. You're not weird. And above all else, you're not sick. In every definition of the word sick, although it's classified or although it's called mental illness, it's not a sickness that defines who you are. It feels really restricting and kind of like a cage that, you're trapped inside of. But once you break free from that mindset of, I have a mental illness, I'm struggling, I'm sick, it really is almost freeing. And, it is very something that really makes you feel alone, especially in the beginning when you don't know many people going through what you're going through and you really struggle with finding your place almost, and kind of finding who you are. But I think once you break free from the mindset of mental health defines who I am, once you get past that, that is like the best thing you can do for yourself, because mental health does not define who you are. There's no dictionary definition for what someone with mental health should look like or should act like. There are symptoms, but symptoms only apply to what, like 80% of people? And even though 80% is a lot of people, like you don't have to fall into that 80%. Don't look at statistics and don't look at symptoms. Just focus on getting through the day and focus on doing the best you can and focus on, doing what's in your power to make yourself happy and do what's in your power to, make yourself feel happy and confident and, raise your self-esteem. Do what you know you do best. Going along with the misconceptions, there really are things that people need to know, and especially younger generations who really idolize the older generations. Whether you have younger siblings or younger family members or younger friends, as they really look up to you and they copy what you do and they think that you're so cool. So, it's really important that we educate that mental health is something that needs to be taken seriously. It is not a fun quirk or, like I said earlier, an aesthetic. It's definitely not a personality trait. It's part of your personality, but it is not a personality trait. like if you're applying for a position anywhere, like whether it's a club or at work, you can't say, some of my personality traits are depression, anxiety, OCD. That's not something that you say. So I think that it's really important to understand that it doesn't make you fun. It doesn't make you quirky. It doesn't make you cute. You know, whatever you might think it makes you, it doesn't make you any of it. Um, and, you know, you don't make new friends through it. You may bond over your experiences, but it really isn't something you show off. Some people, when they show it off, they want people to take on a caretaker role when it comes to them. And, you know, not everyone is made out for a caretaker role. Especially when you're younger, you know, you're not a licensed therapist and you're not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and you know, you don't know what to do when your friend is struggling. You know, they tell you, "Oh, tell a trusted adult." But, you know, how many times are you really going to encounter someone who is really, really struggling and really, really shows it off, and they expect you to take care of them, and they expect you to be their whole support system, and they expect you to, you know, help them through anything they're going through, anything and everything.
I feel like also, I just like thought of something, but I feel like a lot of times, or in the case for me, I feel like 99% of the time I go tell someone, whether it be a friend, family member, about just any struggles with my mental health. It's always, the response is always, okay, what can we do to like get over that point? Or like, what can we do to get past that? Or like, what's the solution? And I feel like a lot of times for me, when I reach out to someone, it's not because I want to hear a solution, or it's not because I want to hear how to get over it. It's just in the moment, I just want support. And I feel like people with mental health, like we know that, or like struggle with their mental health, we know that not everyone is a licensed therapist. We know that not everyone has, you know, everything to like give you all the solutions to your life. But I feel like each human to human, like we just know how to comfort each other in that moment. So maybe it's the people who dramatize mental health to a toxic point that like kind of engraves it in other people, that like, oh, to help people with mental health, like we have to know all these things. But in reality, I feel like to support someone who's struggling with their mental health to any degree, it's just being there for them in that moment. That's really important.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, Emily, because I was definitely someone who would think that the only right way to respond, I guess, is to try and find a solution for them, to whoever I was talking to that was sharing their experience. And I definitely learned over time that it's okay to just listen and respond with thanks for sharing, rather than, you know, trying to find ways to help them. Because when I tried to find solutions and I couldn't, felt so I felt like unhelpful to them. And that meant I wasn't a good friend. And I wondered, you know, why can't I provide them with support and the correct encouragement that they need? Because I thought I had to play that role of being a caregiver. But I realized over time, definitely, that, you know, I'm not a therapist. I haven't taken professional psychology classes. I have a general idea of certain mental illnesses because of school, but I don't know the actual struggles they go through. I can't sympathize or empathize completely 100% with what they go through. So really, it's just best to let them know that you're listening and let them know that you're there for them.
And I think that, you know, it's super important to learn when to listen and when to give advice. I think it's very important to be able to tell the difference between the two situations. And sometimes you can just straight up ask, do you want me to listen or do you want me to give advice? If, you know, you really want to address what they need, address your friend's needs, you know, just ask. There's no harm in asking. And if anything, it's better that you ask than you don't. Because sometimes, like Abby and Emily said, sometimes you really just want people to listen. And, all of a sudden they start going, oh, well, maybe if you did this more, you'd be happier. Or if you did this, you would not be feeling the way you feel right now. And that's just not helpful sometimes. Sometimes you just really want someone to listen, and you just want to talk about it, because talking about it gets it out of you and into the open. And once it's out there, you can do what you want with it. That really, it's out of you and it's no longer poisoning you. And I think, kind of just to wrap up, what we've talked about, it's important to find people who support you, but don't make your friends your whole support system. Your friends are going to play a very big part in your support system, but you're going to need an adult, and most likely a trained professional. Because again, no matter how old your friends are, they never went to school to get a degree in therapy or psychology. They never, spent 4+ years studying. And they're not trained to handle certain issues. So don't make your friends your whole support system. Of course, they're super important, but, don't place all your burden on them, because, they don't know how to deal with it. And, as a friend, you really can only listen so much, and you really can only give so much advice until it starts becoming repetitive. Until your advice starts becoming just words, until it just starts becoming words. I think it's important for you to speak up for yourself. Don't think you're being dramatic. Don't think you're over exaggerating. If you feel a certain way, your body is telling you feel a certain way because there's something wrong. You feel pain because there's something wrong. If you get a paper cut, you feel pain because your body is telling you, hey, you've just accidentally cut yourself, go get a Band-Aid. So you feel emotions because your body is trying to tell you, there's a chemical imbalance somewhere. Because that's really all it boils down to, is a chemical imbalance. Don't compare yourself to others, and don't pay attention to what people say, do, or look like online. It really is all a mask, and it's very fake, and it's never going to be fully casual, and it's never going to be fully real either. When you compare yourself to others, you're really only hurting yourself, because, we all look and act and think differently, because if we were all the same, it would be a really boring world. It would be really, really boring. And I think lastly, just do what makes you happy and don't care about what other people have to say. If you're happy and you're not hurting anyone or yourself, why should you stop doing it? Unless your coping mechanism is, driving 100 miles an hour in a 25 zone because you want to feel alive, maybe don't do that. But if your coping mechanism is just going for a drive when you're feeling sad, rolling all the windows down and blasting music, you're not hurting anyone, and you're not hurting yourself either. So, no one can tell you to stop doing what makes you happy. And, really just don't care about what other people have to say. Everyone's going to judge you, and, everyone has an opinion of you, whether it's good or bad. Like, every single person you meet has an opinion of you. And, even people you don't meet and even people you don't talk to have an opinion of you. Whether it's, wow, she dresses really well, or wow, he looks good in that haircut, or wow, they are a really good artist, they're all going to have an opinion of you. So it really just doesn't matter. You and your opinion of yourself, that's what matters the most. And, if you tell yourself, like, hey, I am blank, I am worth it, then you're worth it. There's no denying the fact that, you're worth it. And I think, above all else, just know that, like, the world is really a better place with you in it. I think that's, like, something that I had to tell myself over and over again was, you make the world kind of fun, and you add, like, another little bit of color, or you add another spice, whatever you want to tell yourself. Just tell yourself that, the world needs you, you need the world. And I mean, that's really all you can do, is control what you think, control what you do. And I read a quote like when I was in 3rd grade, and I think it stuck with me all these years. And it's a really sappy quote. It's kind of really bad, but it really is just, to the world, you really are one person, but to one person, you are the world.
Yes, I love that quote.
Yeah, I don't know where it's from, but
I think it's from the show Girl Meets World. I remember hearing it from that show.
I think so. But I think it's stuck with me for like 10 years at this point, because everyone's going to see you as a person, but there's always that one person out there who like loves you more than anything.
Thank you so much for that positive talk. And it was just, that's everything you said is advice that I'm going to be taking with me in my everyday life. And the way that you worded it is really humanizing and just very relatable, I feel like. So thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I agree. It's really hard when you're surrounded by people telling you what you should be, what you shouldn't be. And especially in the world of mental health, there's a lot of, with stigmas and misconceptions about like how you should act, how you shouldn't act, how you should be recovering. There's just so many people around you, basically everyone telling you who you should be. And you're just trying to figure out, who you are, plus other people telling you who you should be. It's just very confusing. So just doing everything just completely for yourself will help you find yourself. And I feel like you don't like just say, oh, I'm this person, and then you become that person. It's just like all the experiences that you go through shape who you are, and you don't have to put a label on like who you want to be. You just, whatever makes you happy will shape you into the person that you were meant to be. So yeah, just thank you for that positive self-talk. It was really inspiring.
I mean, I'm glad that, my rambling made sense. But just to close off, do what makes you happy, but don't endanger yourself or others by making yourself happy. I think that's the most important thing. Don't, like the example we used, don't go 100 in a 25.
I love that. Thank you so much, Gray. I just wanted to add that, after sharing your story, I've learned so much. And I can just tell you're an incredibly strong person. The fact that you were able to, first of all, just look beyond and see the perspective through the lens of your parents and their intentions for you. And also when it seemed like there were no resources or no help, you went and, took initiative and went to find answers for yourself when no one else was there to help. And also just being that role model for your younger sister and for people even just listening to this podcast. You're just a big influence, and just know that sharing your story today was very, very strong and very admirable. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gray. I really learned so much during this hour. And I think while you were sharing your story and everything, I think we were all able to see your journey, and I think that's definitely an important point to make, is that mental health is definitely a journey, and it's not gonna change overnight, or it's definitely a process. And just seeing how you were able to overcome everything and learn from your experiences is really inspiring. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I mean, your kind words mean a lot. And I think it's just that it's not over yet, and it's not going to be over for a while. So you just have to keep going day by day.
Great. I just wanted to say that I relate to so many parts of your story, and you really explained your story so well. And it just felt really good to know that I'm not alone. And I hope that other people realize that they are not alone, and that there's other people going through similar experiences as them. And you've definitely been a role model to me since the Shameless Self-Love event, which, if you're listening and you don't know what that is, it was basically one of the events that we did as Shameless. And yeah, you're just really good at articulating yourself. And yeah, just thank you for doing this. It was really fun.
Thank you for that. And also, I like the little plug.
The shameless plug. Yep.
Shameless plug.
Thanks for tuning in on this episode of the Shameless Podcast. Stay tuned for more episodes of Shameless Stories. See you next time!